You don't really want this, do you? His hand rested on the curve of my buttocks, and I froze, sitting on the edge of the sofa. Yes, Steve. Want. It will be better this way. Better? For whom? He did not let up. For everyone, Steve. For you, me, Jerry, Anita. I knew he hated it when I mentioned his wife's name in our conversations. I heard him snort as I stood up and walked naked into his office bathroom. Are you afraid that Jerry knows? I knew he would try to keep things the same as they had been for the past 4 months. Going into the bathroom, I began to clean myself up. No, he doesn't know anything, but that's not the point. We both knew this was a bad idea, Steve. We need to finish everything. I don't like the woman I'm becoming. Jerry deserves so much more. I heard him get up from the sofa and walk towards the bathroom. He leaned his naked body on the door frame and looked at me. Don't you deserve to be happy, Marie? If only he knew how stupid that question was. I was happy in my marriage. I was madly in love with Jerry, and I was also stupid. I knew this from the very beginning. How did it all get this far? Understand, he's rich and you feel safe, but we both know he falls short where it really matters. I tell you all the time, everything is fine there. I looked at him with a warning look. Yes, yes, of course. But the words that fall from your lips in the midst of passion say otherwise. He continued to insist. I finished fastening my bra and stared at him. People say all sorts of things at times like these, Steve. It comes out in moments of sexual liberation. This does not mean that everything said is the pure truth. The only sincere words in such moments are the ones I say to Jerry when we make love. You said that the bedroom has become a dead zone. He grinned. Yes, I said that. But I also knew the reason. It wasn't Jerry's fault. I myself have become distant over the past 3 months, mostly due to guilt. It almost seemed to me that if I wasn't making love to Jerry, it was as if I wasn't cheating on him. I know. So stupid. That's why I decided to break up with Steve. His persistence began to anger me. What is this obsession among men with their size, as if it is the key to a happy marriage? As if this is the main and determining thing? Honestly, my first husband was even bigger than Steve, and where did that lead us? 2 children, a bunch of mistresses, and a divorce. Exactly. My first husband cheated on me, like a dog in a period of exacerbation. His excuse, when women found out he was gifted, they pursued him so much that he eventually broke up with at least 10 different women that I knew of. So, all you need for a happy marriage is sex? What nonsense are you telling me, Steve? Tell me, how does it work for Anita? His face turned red when I mentioned his wife again. Hey, you're as bad a wife as I am. That was his objection. Weak, but fair. I didn't want this to turn into an argument. I knew the breakup would be difficult because everything was going so smoothly. Working together gave us a natural opportunity to spend time in his office and reasonable cover. It only happened half a dozen times, but one would have been too many. We were extremely careful, and fortunately, no one in the office even suspected. Even his secretary didn't know anything. When I put on the last heel, I stood in front of the naked Steve and tried to reduce the intensity. Was the sex better? No, not at all. He was different, exciting in his risk-taking. The novelty of it all is like the awkwardness of the first steps in a new experience. I had few such experiences before Jerry, so perhaps I did it out of some sick desire to make up for lost time. Was I really that shallow? Whatever the real answer was, I already knew who I was now. Steve, Jerry, Anita, they deserve better, and we have an obligation to be better. This. I pointed my finger back and forth between us. Shouldn't have happened. I'm just as guilty as you. I could have said no, but I didn't. I don't think any of us thought it would go further than that night after the office party. I came closer and put my hand on his cheek. I wasn't looking for this, and I believe you weren't either. It was new, exciting, even dangerous. I turned to put on my coat. My forever is Jerry, and I'm not going to risk the love of the man who gave me so much of himself anymore. I walked towards his office door and opened it, not caring who might be on the other side. mainly because I knew there would be no one there. It was Christmas after all. Go home, Steve, and kiss your wife. Merry Christmas. I took 3 steps before he peeked out of the office, still completely naked. We both know you'll miss being a real man, Mimi. Come to me when you come to your senses. His impudence stopped me in my tracks. I turned around to look at him. You know, we didn't start all this because I knew about your size. I didn't even suspect this. Was it a pleasant surprise? Certainly. But Steve, I know it's hard for you to understand, but Jerry knows how to take care of me. Nobody knows my body like he does. You're not even close to his league, Steve. And my name is Marie. You have no right to call me by my pet nickname. Is it true? If he's so good in bed, why do we do this all the time on my office couch? I took a deep breath. Honestly, if I knew the answer to this question, I wouldn't be standing here looking at your skinny chicken legs. So childish, I thought, but enough is enough. His outburst made me even more questioning why I even got involved with him. Oh yes, alcohol, like I said. So stupid, I exited the elevator into the underground parking lot and headed to my Mercedes SUV. I involuntarily giggled, remembering my high heel about his legs. He's all thin, not at all like Jerry. Jerry was a linebacker in the professional league in his youth and still kept his 6'4" inches, 235 pounds, 107 kilograms in great shape. His driver's license said he was 52, but he didn't look older than 30. The only thing that gave away his age was the silvery gray hair at his temples. Personally, I really liked this look. I left the underground parking lot and easily joined the traffic on the highway. The drive usually took 40 minutes, but due to the lack of traffic, I was hoping to do it in 30. I found myself looking in the rearview mirror, meeting my gaze with my reflection, I thought, trying to understand why I did such a stupid thing. I still remembered the painful feeling when I found out that Peter, my first husband, had cheated on me. Self-deprecation almost broke me. I tried to understand what I did wrong. Why was he looking for sex on the side, with other women? It took me a lot of therapy to find myself again. The worst part was that Peter couldn't give me a reason for his cheating. He said that it was not about me, but how is this possible? I don't know why, was all he could tell me. How come I was now on the other side of this situation, and his, I don't know, excuse suddenly made sense. I shuddered at my pathetic self-justification, and with renewed vigor, I pushed the feeling of guilt deep inside myself. I spent 5 years as a single mother, raising 2 children and making ends meet. Peter not only had big size, but also the behavior to match. He acted like a real asshole. He tried his best to avoid paying alimony and maintenance. Twice I sued him for avoiding obligations, but after the next decision they were stopped again after a few months. Our children barely knew him at the time of the divorce, and their relationship with him only worsened over the years. I don't think Peter even knows what they look like right now. Just when I thought my life would always be a struggle, Jerry came into my life. We knew each other many years ago. He and Peter played football together. They weren't friends, just teammates, and I saw this big guy a few times during our younger years. Of course, I heard about his financial successes. His ability to invest brought him a lot of money. Later, he became a liquidator of unsuccessful businesses, buying them for pennies and selling them for a profit. He once sold a small software business to a competitor for millions. Many years later, I learned that he was also an anonymous donor to many women's shelters in our state. Our chance meeting took place in Olive Garden, can you imagine? It was a rare evening spent with my daughter Kim, 14, and son, Vince, 16. While we were waiting for our table, I saw him enter the restaurant alone. For a man worth millions, he dressed completely inconspicuously. That evening he was wearing brown khakis, a blue sweater and sandals on his bare feet, thank God, no socks. We made eye contact as he walked up to the counter to make a reservation. When he finished, he came over to say hello. He was so polite, he even shook hands with my children. When we were called to our table, I wished him a good evening with his company. It turned out that he was having dinner alone, and I invited him to join us. As fate would have it, he agreed. I smiled to myself as I remembered how that innocent dinner turned into a marriage 16 months later, a real marriage. The children quickly accepted Jerry, and he easily became involved in their lives. After years of struggling to survive, we lived in comfort under a roof full of love. Although he had the means, Jerry did not spoil us with material things, he gave us opportunities. He opened doors that were previously closed to my children, making them believe that they could achieve anything. When Kim went to Johns Hopkins University to study medicine, Jerry made it possible. Likewise, when Vince received a partial scholarship to MIT's engineering program, Jerry found a way to make it a reality. For me, I got my paralegal degree and started working for a local firm that Jerry recommended. He said I didn't have to work, but I needed to prove that I wasn't a freeloader and wanted to contribute. 3 years later, a large company invited me, and that's how I found myself working under Steve's leadership. I frowned as I heard that expression in my head, working under direction. Given the past 4 months, it has taken on an unpleasant connotation. I pushed these thoughts away like annoying cobwebs. Was this a temporary clouding of reason? It must be. Steve could never compare to Jerry. The big, domineering man was a huge teddy bear inside, except when it came to sex. I laughed out loud, remembering the first time we made love. For such a big and confident man, he became very vulnerable that night. You see, as I already said, Jerry played on the same team as Peter, and therefore he knew what he was endowed with. He modestly admitted to me that he himself was far from being like that, and if this turned out to be a problem for me, he would understand. This thought never even crossed my mind. This wonderful man could never disappoint me, and I did my best to assure him of this. We started out cautiously, but once Jerry got over his inhibitions, he was incredible. Then I shook my head in disgust, realizing that by feeling guilty about my relationship with Steve, I had deprived us of this intimacy. Never again, I said loudly to myself and focused on getting home as quickly as possible and fixing everything. 35 minutes later, I parked in our spacious garage. I looked in the rearview mirror again to make sure I looked decent. As always, the guilt of what I had done to Steve was eating away at me from the inside. For the last time, girl, I whispered out loud, you'll never feel this way again because you'll never do it again. I mentally praised myself for the new leaf I was about to turn over. Losing 4 months out of 10 years of marriage is not so bad, I convinced myself. I was going to spend the rest of my life fixing this and being the best wife Jerry deserved. I got out of the car and entered through the side door into our spacious lobby. Christmas music was playing in the house. Voices and laughter were heard. I wasn't expecting any guests. Our huge Christmas tree filled the air with the pleasant smell of pine needles, instantly putting me in a festive mood. I've always loved this time of year, and Jerry never disappoints. Here she is. A familiar but unexpected voice rang out. Taking off my coat, I turned around and almost fainted. Mother, Dad, what? When? How did they get here? Here she is, our girl. My parents ran up to me and hugged me tightly. I haven't seen them for several years. They moved to Vietnam to spend their retirement years there. Yes, I don't fully understand it either, but they like it there. They say that city life there has become much more modern than shown in old war films, and their pension there was enough for much more. I was in tears. I can't believe you're here. Why didn't you say you were coming? I couldn't let go of any of them. This husband of yours was so persistent that he sent us tickets and seriously instructed us. My father laughed. My parents adored Jerry, of course. Thanks to him, they stopped worrying about me and my children and were able to enjoy their retirement in peace. I looked around for my husband, but he was nowhere to be seen. Taking my parents by the hands, I walked into our large living room. It was a wonderful surprise to be with them this Christmas. Hello, Mom. A woman's voice drew my attention upstairs. I looked up at the balcony that spanned the living room on 3 sides. It was an internal balcony connecting all the doors of the 5 bedrooms on the top floor. The lump came to my throat again. Kimmy, I half screamed with tears of joy. I saw my daughter rush down the hallway and then up the stairs, where I was impatiently waiting for her. She flew into my arms, and we both hugged tightly. "Merry Christmas, Mommy." If you have an adult daughter who still calls you Mommy, you will understand how full my heart was at that moment. "Kimmy, oh my God, how did you end up at home?" She was currently completing a surgical residency in France as part of a doctor exchange program. Her return to her homeland was considered impossible for 4 whole years, but here she is. How did this become possible? Through my tears, I hugged her tighter to me. My parents laughed and cried as they watched our reunion. They also had not seen their granddaughter for many years, although I suspected that they had already seen each other today. We finally let go of each other, and I looked at my beautiful daughter, who had long since become an adult. "You know, when Jerry plans something." She began, but I hugged her again. "This man," I whispered in her ear, trembling from the emotions overwhelming me. We both cried. Finally, I let her go again and took her face in my hands. "God, how beautiful you are." My compliment made her laugh. "By the way, about that man. Where is my husband?" "I think he's in the kitchen. Said something about getting snacks," my mother explained as I looked around. Although our dining room was part of an open space, Jerry's kitchen was separated by large swinging doors, like those saloons in old westerns. I chuckled, knowing my husband would never hire a caterer. He loved to cook, and who am I to deprive him of this pleasure? "Why don't you go see him, honey?" my father encouraged me. "He tried his best for tonight." I smiled at my father, realizing how true this was. I couldn't wait to thank him properly for making this Christmas so special. I kissed everyone and headed through the door into the kitchen. I wished Vince was here to see it all. But this year he was in Germany with his wife, celebrating Christmas with her family. Despite this, the joy my husband brought me never diminished. I pushed the swing doors. "Well, Mr. Wonderful, Merry Christmas, Mom." I honestly thought I was imagining it. Instead of meeting my husband, my son Vince and his wife Peta were standing at the kitchen table. He was in a white shirt, she was in a beautiful red dress that emphasized her porcelain skin. I was so shocked by emotions that I froze in place, and both hands involuntarily covered my mouth and nose. Then the tears flowed. Everything that evening washed over me, and I burst into tears. Mother, everything is fine?" Vince ran up to me from the table and wrapped his strong arms around me before I could fall. He calmed me down, carefully seating me at a table in the kitchen corner. "Mom, it's okay." His voice finally broke through my emotions. When I opened my eyes, he was sitting right in front of me with a wide, beautiful smile. I looked at Peta standing behind him, also with tears in her eyes. "Oh, Vince," I hugged him like a boa constrictor. "Easy, Mom, you'll break my rib," he teased, and now it was my turn to reassure him. I reached out and pulled his wife into my arms. I thought you were in Germany?" I asked when I finally let them go. "Isn't it your turn to visit Peta's parents?" "That was the plan," he looked at his wife. "But you know Jerry, if he's up to something." They both smiled. I looked up at my daughter-in-law. "Sorry you won't see your parents this year, Peta. I'm sure they're disappointed that you won't visit them." "Oh, we'll see them anyway," she smiled. "Oh, you're not going to fly for Christmas, are you?" Now she looked at my son. "No, you won't have to, because Jerry brought them here to spend Christmas with us." "What? Are your parents here?" I looked around the kitchen. "Jerry arranged everything, Mom. Their parents are most likely in the living room. They were hiding in the bedroom when you arrived." "You mean?" I started. "Yeah, he planned it all," Vince beamed. "Damn, that was great. Didn't you suspect anything?" "Not for a second. I thought we'd be alone this Christmas." "I don't mean it in a bad way," I corrected. "Do you need to hide your spicy outfits?" Peta teased me, and I felt myself blush. I actually had plans for a romantic evening for two. The swing doors opened, and everyone entered the kitchen. My daughter, my parents, and Peta's parents, Christopher and Heidi. We all gathered around the kitchen corner, laughing and crying at my emotions. When my daughter hugged me from behind, I felt the happiest and most loved in the world. But then the feeling of guilt for my actions came flooding back. "Where's Jerry?" I asked. "I haven't seen him yet." All these wonderful surprises, and my husband was nowhere to be found. Knowing him, he's probably calling the North Pole to arrange for Santa to fly over. My son joked, and everyone laughed. With snacks and drinks, we moved into the large living room, where I immediately noticed a large red figure next to our Christmas tree. We all stopped and laughed. Despite the Santa suit, I would recognize that ass anywhere. I giggled, thinking that he must have ordered this suit specifically so that it would fit his large figure so well. Everyone else went to the sofas and armchairs, and I walked up to the big red man. "Santa," I whispered sweetly, "have you by any chance seen my wonderful husband?" After he placed the last gift under the tree, he turned to face me. His face was made up to look older, but I would have recognized those dark brown eyes anywhere. "Ho, ho, ho. Well, hello, young lady." He grabbed his artificial belly and shook it. "Who are you looking for?" Well, he wanted to play a role. I didn't mind. "This is the most special person in the world, Santa. He has a heart of gold, and I love him very much. Ho, ho, ho. Sounds like a decent man. What did you say his name was?" His eyes didn't sparkle as usual, probably because of the makeup, I thought. "Well, my husband, of course." I leaned over to whisper. "If you see him, tell him I have a special gift for him that he can unpack later." My voice was silky and soft. "Is this a gift just for him?" I was taken aback by this phrase for a moment. I felt my guilt rise again, but then I realized that he was still playing his role. "Oh, Santa, how naughty you are." I leaned closer. "Sorry, but only my husband can unpack me." I expected him to laugh or do some other ho ho ho, but instead he just looked at me with an even look. "Okay, honey, I'll definitely tell you," he answered dryly, put his finger to his nose, and went to the bar to prepare drinks for everyone. The evening was simply amazing. Christmas Eve has always been special to me, and what Jerry did that evening was truly a miracle. I watched him laugh and joke with my parents and children. He and Peta had a particularly warm relationship. For a moment, I allowed myself to get lost in dark thoughts. I thought about how close I came to losing it all. On some level, I knew I didn't deserve Jerry after what I'd done, but that feeling only made me more determined to never make those mistakes again. Over time, I was sure I would be able to forgive myself for this stupidity. Jerry was a model host, making sure everyone had full plates and glasses. When he brought me another glass of white wine, I gently grabbed his hand. "Why don't you sit with me for a little while, dear? I want to enjoy your company." "Well, young lady," he was still speaking in his fake Santa voice, "I think you should focus on those you rarely see. Before you know it, they'll be gone and the house will be empty." "Well, it's not completely empty," I winked. "I'll still have my sexy husband to keep me warm. It's Christmas. Miracles happen." He winked too and went to teach Peta how to make a proper gin martini. It took me a while to process his comment. What did he mean? I brushed aside my suspicion, chalking it up to guilt. By the time the evening began to end, it was already past 1 in the morning. Everyone yawned, trying to continue the festive fun, but fatigue took over. We started doing our goodnight hugs, and then I saw Kim pick up a square box from under the Christmas tree. "For Kim, from Santa." "Ooh, can I open one before bed?" We all laughed when my daughter, a future heart surgeon, portrayed an 8-year-old girl. "Ah, ah, ah," Santa shook his finger at her. "You know the rules, my little dirty little thing." "Everyone go to bed," Santa thundered, and we all laughed at Kim's disappointed sigh. When I got to my room, I changed into a light night robe. I was tired, but I still wanted to thank Santa properly before going to bed. By the time he entered the room, I was almost asleep. "When will you take off this suit and make love to your wife?" I half screamed, half giggled. He sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at me. "There will be a lot to do tomorrow morning, so I'll finish cleaning downstairs." "I think tomorrow will be a little crazy," he winked again. Before leaving, I grabbed his hand. "Jerry, thank you. It was the best Christmas I can remember, with the kids and my parents. You have exceeded all expectations. I don't deserve you, I smiled and made a kissing gesture. Perhaps you're right, he noted. Wait, what did he just say? I wanted you to have a Christmas you'll never forget. He patted my hand and left. Good night. Tomorrow is an important day. As I stared after him, a small, uneasy feeling arose in my stomach. Why? Out of guilt? After all, I was quite nice all evening. True, I didn't spend much time alone with Jerry. He was too busy being a good host while I socialized and drank. I decided from tomorrow morning to start showing this man how much I love him. With this thought, I easily fell asleep. I woke up scared. I don't understand why. I looked at my watch, 7:52 am. I slept a little longer, but not too much. Then why do I feel anxious? I turned over and noticed that Jerry was not in bed. His side wasn't even straightened out. And then I saw this. A neatly wrapped square gift with an envelope on top. I moved closer, took the envelope, and opened the handwritten letter. My dear Marie, I never knew what I was missing in my life until I met you at Olive Garden that fateful day. The impact you and the kids had on me was immediate. I didn't know there were holes in my heart until you three filled them. Tears began to stream down my cheeks. I knew Jerry loved me, but he was never given to such sentimental statements, and his letters spoke straight to my heart. The last 10+ years have been the best years of my life, and for that I will always be grateful to you. This is why this next part is so hard. Next part. My stomach began to churn. All those nights filled with tears, I listened to you talk about how Peter destroyed your self-esteem. I wanted to take away your pain, but all I could do was let you know that you were loved. With the resources I had, I wanted to make Peter pay for what he did to you, Kim and Vince. But deep down I knew it was more for my sake than for yours. Oh God, he knows. The last 3 months have been especially difficult. I didn't know what I did to make you start moving away from me. Yes, I noticed. It wasn't just a fall in sex. I understood that this happens sometimes, and I was willing to be patient, no matter how long it took you. But these were minor things. Kisses for no reason, a light touch on my shoulder. That look that lit up in your eyes when you saw me after a long day. All this has disappeared. The worst part was how your shoulder moved away from my kisses or how your hand quickly moved away at my touch. Now I was sobbing out loud. My vision was blurred by tears. I know how much Christmas means to you, and that's why I did everything I could to make it happen. Unfortunately, events had already begun to unfold when I realized that you were moving away. I wanted to give you the Christmas of all Christmases. Alas, it may not turn out to be what you imagined. I have never been able to say this before with such conviction as I do now. I know how empty you felt when Peter cheated on you. You were right. It destroys a person. Jerry. No, 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 I sobbed, burying my face in the rumpled sheets. I jumped up, grabbed the phone from the bedside table, and called him. A moment later, I heard a familiar melody. She's one in a million girls, his ringtone set to me. She's a beauty by the tubes, was coming from his bedside table. He didn't even pick up the phone. All the strange and mysterious words made sense. Is this just for him? Perhaps I really am too good for you. Miracles happen. I collapsed on the bed, shaking from physical and emotional pain. What have I done? My hand accidentally touched the gift he left on the bed. I instantly froze, looking at him like he was a bomb, or, even worse, divorce papers. Carefully, I removed the decorative bow and ribbon, then lifted the lid. Gathering my courage, I looked inside and saw folded paper. When I unfolded it, I felt as if I had been hit with a sledgehammer. It was a photo of me with... I couldn't even think about it. How? I blurted out loud. Below the photo were several others. In each photo, the look of pleasure on my face was like another dagger to my heart and my marriage. Oh, damn. I rushed to the bathroom, but before I could, I vomited right at the door. Kneeling down next to the toilet, I suddenly realized how destructive my action had been. It took me a while to get up, but there were people in the house, and I had to put on a mask to explain my condition and Jerry's absence. I had to find a way to fix everything. I was already drinking my third glass of coffee when the others started going downstairs. My mother walked into the kitchen and instantly knew something was wrong. Before she could ask, I handed her a cup of coffee. "Not now, Mom, please." She took the cup and nodded slowly. "Jerry left a note," my father said, walking into the kitchen. "Good morning, everyone." I had to go away. "Please don't wait for me," he read aloud in front of the entire room. "Well, it seems Santa left gifts for everyone," Kim said enthusiastically. She handed out square boxes to each of the couples. I even took one for myself. I watched as she sat down and began to remove the ribbon and bow with a wide smile. It looked like this. "Oh no. Wait, Kimmy. I realized too late." I saw her smile disappear as she opened the box and peeled back the paper wrapper. My daughter's eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, holding those same photographs in her hands. "Mother," her voice trembled. I couldn't look her in the eyes. My legs gave way and I fell to the floor, spilling coffee everywhere. Screams of horror and anger were heard in the room. Jerry was right. It was a Christmas I will never forget. "Welcome, Mr. Fredrickson." "Jimmy, how many times do I have to remind you? Call me Jerry." "Sorry, sir. It's a professional habit," he laughed. "Will your wife join you this festive evening?" "No, Jimmy. Just me," I replied. I noticed his worried look, but he restrained his curiosity. "Marie and I have been here often over the past 10 years. First with children, then together. This place became our refuge from the real world. Something about being surrounded by mountain peaks and snow really healed the soul. Outdoor hot springs, heated pools, skiing, fireplaces in the rooms. It was amazing. Would you like your usual suite, Mr. Jerry? He's free." I twirled my wedding ring on my finger. "Maybe something different this time, Jimmy? If it's not difficult." "Of course, no problem." He tapped the keys on his computer. I looked around the deserted foyer. After the last keystroke, Jimmy stood up and handed me the number card. "Suite 310, Mr. Sorry, Jerry. The view from there is amazing." I thanked him, took my small bag, and headed towards the elevator. Soon I found myself in the room. Placing my bag on the end of the bed, I walked to the balcony and opened the curtains. Part of the mountain was illuminated for night skiing, light snow falling quietly in the shadows of the trees. It was a beautiful scene. I took off my coat, then undressed and headed into the spacious shower with multiple jets. Pressing the button, I let the hot streams of water wash away the tension. I refused to think about what had happened in the last 24 hours. Part of me believed that everything was deserved, but the children, my mothers-in-law and father-in-law, as well as Peda's parents, were unwitting victims. The truth is that I wanted Marie to suffer. I wanted her to feel the betrayal and humiliation that I experienced, albeit for different reasons. I shuddered underwater as images of her cheating on Steve flashed before my eyes. The intimacy of their actions was the most painful part. These pictures, her expressions. All this will haunt me for the rest of my life. Tears flowed, but the water washed them away. I watched them disappear down the drain as a visual metaphor for my marriage. Once dry and wrapped in one of their classic robes, I lit the fireplace by simply flipping the switch. This one was gas, and I was grateful that I didn't have to put any effort into starting it. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and ice and sat down in a huge chair opposite the artificial fire. Memories of the night before flashed through my head. Everything was so perfect. The look on Marie's face as each of the surprises came true. I knew how much she missed her family, and I did everything I could to give her a Christmas she would remember forever. I shuddered as I realized that my actions would actually have such an effect. What should have been one of the happiest moments of her life turns into her worst nightmare. I took a long sip of whiskey as conflicting emotions tormented my heart. The burn from the drink briefly distracted my thoughts until the phone in my room rang. I looked at the desk phone to my right. Even though I left without warning this morning, I knew who it was. I picked up the phone and waited. "Sorry to bother you, Jerry, but you have an urgent call." "Connect?" Yes, Jimmy. Thank you. Fine. Merry Christmas, sir. Before I could respond with a holiday wish, I heard the line switch and the call was transferred. Jerry? Jerry, is that you? Merry Christmas, Anita. My words sounded empty. I assume, since I'm talking to you, you did it after all. I sighed several times, trying to muster the strength to answer. Yes, I did. I paused. I'm not proud of it, but I did it. I suspected that you would have remorse afterwards. She also fell silent for a moment. Whatever it means, Jerry, I truly regret my role in this. Anita is the wife of Steve Leishman, Marie's boss. A week ago, she unexpectedly suggested meeting for coffee. That's when she revealed everything to me. She suspected that Steve was cheating on her with his secretary at work. Because her father was the firm's principal partner, she received permission to hire a company to install hidden cameras in his office and reception area. Her father tried to dissuade her from these suspicions, but could never refuse his daughter. Of course, she was right about Steve cheating. However, I was wrong about who. She kept it to herself for a long time before she decided that I needed to know about it. She intended to divorce him and understood that all this would come out, so she wanted to somehow soften the blow for me, if possible. Of course, I doubted her accusations until she asked if I wanted to see the evidence. I knew Anita from company events, and she was not one to say anything without complete certainty. She said she had videos and photos from the last 6 weeks. When I nodded, she took an envelope from her bag and placed it in front of me. There are only photographs here. I don't recommend watching the video. The person I hired told me the same thing, and I regret not listening. But if you want... She fell silent when my trembling hand reached for the envelope. She watched silently as I opened it and pulled out the photographs. Even though I knew what to expect, I wasn't prepared to see it. I immediately put the pictures back in the envelope. One glance was enough. Anita reached across the small table and took my hand. Never in my life would I have thought that Marie was capable of this. She always seemed like a woman in love. Even I was jealous of the way she looked at you and talked about you. Video? I could barely get the words out. The same thing, only in motion. Our eyes met, and I saw that her pain was as real as mine. Feeling that I was losing strength, she squeezed my hand tighter. Jerry, she never allowed herself to insult you in front of Steve. Every time that idiot tried, she nipped it in the bud. And more than once she talked about her guilt and how they should stop because it's not fair to you and me. I chuckled at the contradiction in her words, considering what she and Steve were doing. Like I said, whatever that means. She removed her hand. We talked a little more before going our separate ways. Later, I continued to analyze the events and came to the conclusion that the future of our family had now changed forever. There's nothing to blame you for, Anita. Despite all this nastiness, I appreciate you warning me. Have you heard anything from her or your family? No. I left my phone at home and no one knows where I am. Maybe someone will get lucky, but after this call, I will ask the front desk to deny my presence to all callers. You'll have to talk to her sooner or later, Jerry, she said sympathetically. I know, Anita, just not ready yet. We sat in silence for several minutes. What are you going to do next? Will you divorce her? To be honest, I don't know yet. Anita responded with silence at first. Jerry, you are not alone in this. I know you feel this way right now, but you have people who love you. Don't do anything rash. I had time to think about everything. This is still a fresh wound for you. Have you talked to Steve yet? Tomorrow, after lunch with my parents. Merry Christmas, baby. Her laugh was forced. Jerry, I pulled out the last video from Christmas Eve. She paused. Marie broke up with Steve. He didn't want to take no for an answer, but she insisted. She said that she wants to put this mistake behind her and dedicate herself to making amends for you. Tell me, Anita, was it before or after they had sex? Her silence spoke for itself. Yes, Jerry, this was after. Our conversation came to an end, and we promised to contact each other when the situation became a little clearer. Once again, I was left alone with my thoughts. thoughts that swirled like snowflakes outside the window. Marie, they say there are 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Personally, I felt that over the past 12 hours I had already reached stage 4, although it can be argued that I will be stuck in depression for a long time. What could have been the best Christmas of my life turned out to be the worst, most stressful day of my entire existence. Even the emotions caused by Peter's betrayal seemed like nothing compared to yesterday. After hours of screaming and crying, I was so exhausted that my body gave out. That is, it literally stopped working. I collapsed on the floor and woke up with an oxygen mask on my face and a female paramedic standing over me. After much argument, I refused to go to the hospital, and since my vital signs had returned to normal, I could not be taken away against my will, despite my mother's insistence. Only after they left did I notice that everyone was gone, except my parents. Lying on the sofa in the fetal position, I flinched from a soft tap on my thigh. "You need something to eat, Mimi." My mother stood with a cup in her hands. "I'm not hungry, Mom," I mumbled. "You heard them. Your blood sugar levels are not okay at all. You haven't eaten anything since last night." She knocked again, forcing me to sit up. She handed me a cup. "It's just broth, but it's a start." She turned around to leave. "Why?" I whispered, causing my mother to turn around. Why did I do such a stupid thing? I looked at my mother and cried again. I saw her hesitation, but, sighing heavily, she came and sat down next to me. That seems to be the question everyone is asking today. Her comment hit my heart hard, but I knew she wasn't trying to be mean. It was simply the truth. "Where is Dad?" I asked, like an 8-year-old child who knows that he has disappointed his father. "Upstairs. Once he was sure you were going to be okay, he needed to distance himself from the situation a little." I was about to say something, but she passed the broth to my lips, and I took a few careful sips of the hot drink. Peda's children and parents moved to a hotel for the night. Seeing Kim's face when she saw those pictures of me and Steve almost made me throw the broth back. "When did I become such a terrible person, Mom?" I asked through tears. She carefully took the cup and let me rest my head on her shoulder. "Well, dear, maybe the first question you need to answer is, why?" This question was asked again, a question to which I had no answer, at least not one that made any sense. I was happy, really happy. Jerry came into my life and became everything I wanted, needed, and more. Why? The little 3-letter word that holds all the cards. I know I sound just like Peter, but I don't know Mom. I lifted my head from her shoulders. Even before he devastated me like that, I never thought I would become this person. While I don't condone it in any way, you're nothing like Peter, Marie. Peter was a serial cheater who dated multiple women. This man lived his life through sex. Sooner or later, he will meet an angry husband or boyfriend. I know he's a big guy, but the gun doesn't matter. I wanted to laugh, but the depth of my situation did not give me such pleasure. My mom was right. He really wasn't thinking with his head. Perhaps his inability to explain why had more to do with his inability to own his shit. The question becomes, what do I have but bad decisions? "Was that what we were talking about?" asked my mother. "What do you mean?" "Well, your boss is bigger. Is that what drew you to his couch?" "Mother," I sat down in disgust. I told my mom about Peter's very big package, mainly because I was afraid of painful sex. Her assurances that my body was adapting brought both relief and awkwardness. Did she have the same experience? How can you say that? You're the one who can't answer why. I'm just challenging that position. Her gaze was non-judgmental, which was a welcome change. My shoulders slumped. Yes, he is bigger, but I didn't know that. That wasn't my motivation. Did he threaten your job? Did he blackmail you? There must be something important. If not the thrill, then what made you change? Here it is. There was condemnation in her tone and again in her eyes. "For God's sake, Mimi, you let this man do all sorts of things to you." Oh God, I desperately wanted to know how he got all these photos, but the question, "where from?" seemed so trivial now. Our conversation was interrupted immediately after her comment. I could find no further words on the subject, which prompted her to leave me with my thoughts. She invited me to drink the broth and went upstairs. A few hours later, I managed to make it to the kitchen to make some toast as my hunger began to increase my discomfort. I was buttering some toast when my father came into the kitchen. He walked past me and started opening the refrigerator. I watched him out of the corner of my eye as he moved things around, but ended up closing the door with nothing in his hands. He turned to leave, but before he passed me, I jumped in front of him and hugged his body. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for what I did and how it affects everyone." My face was buried in his chest, but his arms did not hug me back. "Did you reach Jerry?" "No, Dad. How can I do this? He forgot his phone. He could be anywhere." "Have you tried it?" he persisted. My grip on his body loosened. "No, not yet," I confessed. "Maybe." Before he could finish his sentence, I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening. This always caused changes in air pressure in the house. It was as if you could feel the change in the atmosphere in the house. I ran away from my father, squeezed through the swinging doors, and headed towards the door, hoping that I could finally talk to Jerry. Unfortunately, the man who entered the house was not my husband, but my son. I stopped when he shook the snow off his shoulders and kicked off his shoes. I looked for some semblance of love or forgiveness in his eyes. Even though he didn't look angry at me, I could still see the disappointment written all over his face. "Vince," I started, but stopped. "Mother." His confession did not contain the love that I had experienced quite recently. "Where's Peta?" It was the easiest way to keep the conversation going. She felt it was best to stay at the hotel with her parents. I lowered my head and nodded in understanding. "I think we should talk, Mom." He motioned for me to sit on the sofa. We sat for a few minutes while my father went upstairs. "I spoke to Jerry this morning." My body caught my attention. "Is he okay? Where is he? What did he say? When will he return home?" Questions flew out of my mouth like a verbal machine gun. Vince raised his hands to make me stop. "Vince, is he okay?" It took my son a moment to respond. He looked at the ceiling for a second. "He's worried, Mom. In all the years I've known Jerry, his voice has never sounded so uncertain." My hands covered my mouth at the news of his pain. Other than that, he assured me he was fine, and no, he didn't tell me where he was. He said he would take a few days to think. He told me he would keep in touch. "Is that all?" I croaked. Well, he apologized. I probably looked confused by his statement, so Vince continued. "He feels like he's gone overboard with Christmas presents for everyone. He said he didn't want anyone to doubt him or assume he was wrong. But he also—" My son turned away from me. "He admitted that he wanted to embarrass you, Mom. He wanted you to feel some of the pain and humiliation you caused him." "What did you say?" "What can I say, Mom? No child wants to see their mother like this, especially with another man other than her husband. We were all hurt, but I understand that he wasn't thinking clearly. Peta has already forgiven him. I haven't talked to Kimmy yet. She won't answer my calls. I'm not sure if Jerry called her or if I should relay all this to her. I'll contact you before she rushes back to Paris." "She's not," I screamed at my son out of frustration. In response, he shrugged. I immediately found my phone and called her cell phone. No matter how many times I called, I would receive her voicemail. I hurried upstairs and entered my parents' room. "Have any of you talked to Kimmy? She doesn't answer my calls." My mom looked at my dad, who looked like he had swallowed a lemon. "Yes, this morning." My father said he was under duress. "Where is she? Is she returning to Paris early?" I pushed. She was going to reschedule her flight to an earlier date. After all, she was only supposed to be here for 3 days anyway. I flew out of their room and stopped at the railing. Vince left, my daughter was about to leave, my parents were angry with me. It was too much. I knew what I did was terrible, but being rejected by all my support turned into anger. I knew that it was all my fault, but they left me one by one. Jerry, I was hoping that when I woke up the next day, I would feel better, clearer in my head. But it seems that whiskey and sleepless nights had their own opinion on this matter. One thing I knew for sure, I needed to talk to the children. I first tried to call Kim, but got on voicemail. The call to Vince went through. It was an unpleasant conversation. Over time, I realized that the decision to destroy Maria affected them too. The photo gift wasn't the best idea in retrospect. Vince seemed to handle it better. At least he could understand that I was acting out of pain. He quickly forgave me and was more concerned about me. Luckily, we didn't talk much about cheating, but I told him his mother would need them. I wanted to hurt her, but turning the whole family against her was not part of my plan. He promised to tell my mother that I was fine and that I would be gone for a while. I genuinely wanted to talk to Kimmy, but he couldn't reach her either. When our conversation came to an end, he asked where I was, but I did not answer. I needed to be alone, at least for now. So I spent another evening looking at the dark sky through the glass doors on the balcony. I hoped that tomorrow would be easier. The next morning, I went down to the cafe in the main lobby. It was technically lunch, and I knew I needed to start eating something other than alcohol. After grabbing some food from the buffet, I sat down at a table for two to the side. To my surprise, I was hungry and quickly finished the eggs and sausages. As I wiped my mouth with a napkin and reached for my coffee, I saw her. My view of the lobby was a little limited, but I knew it was her. She looked around until she looked into the cafe. Less than 10 seconds later, our eyes met. She instantly ran towards me, and I stood up from my chair just as she collided with me. She immediately started crying, and I did everything I could to calm her down. Hush, hush, it's okay, Kimmy. I don't know how my precious stepdaughter found me. We were attracting too much attention, so I led her away from the cafe to a quieter part of the lobby. We walked over to the sofa and sat down next to each other. She still held on to me, as if she was afraid that I would run away again. Kimmy, Kim, honey, talk to me. How could she do this to you? She whispered into my neck. Everything you did for her was for us. Why? I don't have an answer to that, darling. But now this doesn't change anything for you and your brother. I know it's illegal, but you are my children, and that won't change. She burst into tears even harder and squeezed me even tighter. Time passed before she calmed down. We both wanted to ask each other a lot of questions, and when the opportunity arose, I asked her to come upstairs with me. As I walked past the front desk, I noticed her turn her head. "Thank you, Jimmy," she whispered. I looked over her head and saw Jimmy smile until he met my gaze. Suddenly, his eyes began to search for anything but us. I made a mental note that I would talk to him later. I made us coffee in the room, and we sat on the same sofa from which I looked at the snow that night. "How did you find me, Kim?" "Apparently Jimmy helped," I asked. "Please don't be mad at him. I called last night. He denied that you were here, but when I started crying, he couldn't stand it and admitted that you were here, but you didn't want anyone to know. What made you call here? Oh, please. I know how dear this place is to you. To you and Mom. This has always been your place for a family vacation or personal retreat. You adore this mountain air and all this village romance." I laughed. She was right about the mountain air, but about the country air, not for the money it costs. Okay, but how did you get here so quickly? Late-night flight to a major city, then a prepaid ride from the airport here. How did you allow yourself to do this? Everything at the last minute must have cost a fortune. I noticed her face turn red, and suddenly she looked like a 14-year-old girl again. "I used the card you gave me for emergencies." I looked at her sternly. "Jerry, if it's not an emergency, then what is?" She was sincere, and I couldn't argue with her. She had this card for several years and never used it. She was a strong young woman, and her mom and I were always so proud of her, as well as her brother. She took a sip of coffee and looked at me. "Are you okay?" I leaned back and exhaled the air I had been holding in all this time. I think okay would be an exaggeration. We exchanged slight smiles. I'm no different from you, your brother, or your grandparents. I have no idea what I did. I would bet the whole house on Maria, but it looks like I would be left in financial ruins. I guess that's how I feel right now. Destroyed. It's good that you've never been a gambler, she said with a grin, diffusing the situation a little. How? How's Mom? Why did my voice tremble? Now she was thinking. Well, yesterday there was a real nuclear nightmare. Sorry about that, Kim. Those photos, ugh. That was a poorly thought-out decision. I was humiliated and angry, and I decided to take it out on your mom. I didn't think about how this would affect you all. You and your family shouldn't have seen this. She looked at me, considering my apology. Don't know. As much as it shocked me, I think I needed to see it. I wanted to interrupt her, but she raised her hand to stop me. At least to understand the pain you were experiencing. It broke my heart. I can only imagine what it did to yours. She moved even closer to me. I know I was very young, but I never really understood the devastation my mother went through when she found out about our dad, what she had to go through to restore herself. She touched my hand. And then you appeared like a prince on a white horse and turned our lives around, filling them with happiness. You may not be my biological father, Jerry, but I have long considered you my dad. I know Vince feels the same way, and that is why Mom's betrayal is so difficult to accept. She ruins not only your life, but ours too. We spent several hours discussing everything. Of course, the main thing was the failure of my marriage, but we also talked about her internship and long-term plans. She reminded me of my mother, and despite the bitterness I now felt towards Maria, it was a compliment. I had no doubt that her self-esteem would never be shaken, just like Maria's. When is your flight back to Paris? I didn't want to be the voice of reason, but we both knew her visit would be short. I was able to negotiate 3 days over Christmas, but it's amazing what a generous donation can do. 5 in the morning, she replied, tucking her hair behind her ears, again reminding me of her teenage years. It's a pity that I have to leave. She pressed her shoulder to me. Where will you stay tonight? She looked at me with her big blue eyes and batted her eyelashes. I see, I grinned. What about your luggage? Jimmy left it at the concierge for me. She smiled, realizing that she had achieved her goal. Okay, I'll reschedule your flight, but don't expect me to get up early to say goodbye. She laughed, knowing that I wouldn't miss the opportunity anyway. We spent a quiet evening in the room, having dinner and discussing the situation. She tried to come up with some rational explanation for her mother's action, but found nothing. I talked at length about the need to forgive her mother. The truth was that even though her actions affected everyone, she only cheated on me. Maria was and will remain a wonderful mother, and she and Vince need to understand that. Whatever happens between me and Maria, it concerns only us. The next morning, I walked Kimmy downstairs, handing her the breakfast I had ordered to go. She cried a little when we hugged, but I think she was in much better shape now than when she arrived. Kim, promise me you'll call your mom. Now we are not talking about complete forgiveness. She will feel abandoned, and no one should feel that way. Don't you feel that way yourself? She asked seriously. No, not abandoned. I don't think she intentionally meant to hurt me, but I feel betrayed. I tucked her hair behind her ear. You will always only have one mother, Kim. She will go through fire for you and Vince. This must mean something. She nodded and got into the limousine. I watched her drive away and waved when she opened the window to say goodbye. I walked back in and went looking for Jimmy. He saw me and, with obvious concern in his eyes, prepared to talk. Jimmy, I looked at him. Mr. Fredrickson, he answered with a hint of confidence. I understand that I did not fulfill your request, and for this violation of professionalism I sincerely apologize. He nodded his head slightly, but as a son who watched his parents' marriage fall apart, I knew something was wrong when the missus didn't accompany you. Kim sounded so upset that I was afraid that saying no would only make her hurt worse. I made a decision that I felt was justified, but if you want to speak to the manager on duty, I understand. I had known Jimmy for 5 years and had never seen him act in anything other than a professional manner. True, he did not fulfill my request, but the truth is that meeting Kimmy was exactly what I needed. I studied him for a few more seconds before I reached my hand across the counter. He looked uncertain, but when he saw my expression soften, he shook my hand. In my time, this would have been called good improvisation. Thanks, Jimmy. I went up to my room and decided it was time to make a decision. The initial despair has passed, and now it is time to pull yourself together and deal with what comes next. I think I already knew that I was thinking about divorce, but I still had no idea what it would look like. Our prenuptial agreement was drafted securely so that my business would remain intact. Even from a personal point of view, I could walk away with minimal financial loss. But I wasn't more worried about losing money. It's been 4 days since my Christmas turned into a disaster. I usually took the week off between Christmas and New Year, but sitting at home alone certainly wouldn't have helped. While my parents were still in town, they avoided me while hanging out with friends or sightseeing. Vince and Peta went on a trip with her parents to a small spa resort. They tried to salvage what they could from the holidays. Kimmy finally called me. This was while she was waiting for a flight back to Paris. It was a difficult conversation, full of tears and harsh words, but at the end she told me that she loved me, and that alone was significant. She promised to call every other day as before. Knowing that she was trying meant the world to me. With all this going on, I still haven't heard a word from Jerry. I didn't go crazy about it anymore. I think realizing my betrayal helped me see what my life would be like without the man I loved so much. So much? Then why did I sleep with someone else? These thoughts prompted me to call my old therapist, who helped me after Peter left. Having nothing better to do, I headed to the office to take care of some minor errands and make a few calls. It didn't take long to notice the changes. I walked past Steve's office, and it was as empty as a house after a visit from the Grinch. I stopped at the door and had a sinking feeling that my life was about to get even worse. Ah, Marie. Fine. I'll save time on the call. Come see me. Mr. Klein was the senior partner and usually oversaw all appointments and dismissals. Like a first grader who knows she's in trouble for misbehaving, I reluctantly walked into his office and saw a chair sitting in front of his huge mahogany desk. As I sat down, the realization of how far the consequences of my actions had gone came flooding back to me. If Steve was fired, then it's clear that Anita knows everything. I think if Jerry had decided to make me a laughingstock in front of the whole family, he wouldn't have stopped short of using Anita to destroy Steve. Mr. Klein seemed deliberately slow as he moved some papers in front of him. I wanted to ask how his holidays were, but quickly abandoned this bad idea. When he finished fiddling with papers, he leaned back in his huge leather chair and folded his fingers in front of him, resting his elbows on the wooden armrests. For a long time, he just looked at me. I wanted him to say something to ease the tension. The door behind me opened and closed. I turned my head and saw Anita moving towards the chair on the side. Well, I think we can start this farce now. The old man chuckled. I hope we can do without all this. I don't know why I'm here crap. I looked down and nodded. Marie, I have to tell you, I would never have thought in my life that you were one of those women. He paused. You and Jerry always seemed like the perfect couple. This man deserved better. I nodded again because he was right. I'm so sorry, Mr. Klein. I know that my action is a slap in the face for the company and especially for you personally. I looked at Anita. And most of all for you, Anita. Didn't your first husband cheat on you? Asked the old man. I nodded again in shame. Damn it, this couldn't have been made up. He chuckled. Mr. Klein, I'm sorry in many ways, but I'm also sorry that my husband decided to drag the entire firm into this. He humiliated me well at Christmas in front of the whole family, but I never thought that he... You stupid bitch. Anita interrupted me. I fell silent and turned to her. Do you think it was your husband who told us about this? I couldn't answer her question. She shook her head in disappointment. I almost single-handedly destroyed your husband over a cup of coffee. What? My eyes widened in surprise. Be glad you didn't see the expression on his face when I told him about your betrayal. Are you? Are you? I take my words back. You should have seen this. Jerry is the kindest and most decent person I know. All his confidence, his entire world, collapsed right in front of me. You stupid woman of easy virtue, this man loved you and trusted you completely. I was the one who found out about your affair. I thought this asshole was sleeping with his secretary. I would never have thought that the woman in the video was you, Marie. Video. I almost jumped out of my seat. Anita picked up the USB drive. For hours. She grinned, and I collapsed back into my chair, bursting into tears. I never showed them to him. I said he could take them if he wanted, but I wanted to spare him the humiliation of seeing his loving wife doing this. The tears turned into full-blown sobs. If the photos weren't enough of a blow to destroy Jerry's love for me, then the videos would be the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. All my sobs, and I had no one to blame but myself. I saw Anita stand up and walk towards me until she stood next to me. He never asked me for them, and I'm grateful for that. Trust me, I know how painful it is to watch. She took a deep breath. I also heard your voice on some recordings where you repeatedly said that you both should stop. You were often the voice of reason when that idiot wanted to humiliate either me or Jerry. Why? Why didn't you make the right choice, Marie? She took a deep breath again. I saw the last video, the one that was filmed on Christmas Eve. It looks like you finally came to your senses then, but unfortunately, it's too late. It would be more convincing if you didn't sleep with him first. She handed me the flash drive. At first, I didn't want to accept it, but she insisted on putting it in my hand until I clenched it in my fist. If you want to know, no, this is not the only copy. This is your copy. I think you should look at yourself from the outside. Maybe then you will decide whether you are worthy of the love of a man like Jerry. She left the room, leaving me with my tears and Mr. Klein looking very unhappy. You have put this firm and the senior partners in a very awkward position, Mrs. Fredrickson. If it were all up to me, you would be kicked out of this company, following that piece of crap you slept with. He stood up and walked around his desk, leaning against the edge, facing me. It seems my daughter doesn't want to add stress to your husband. He asked us to consider leaving you. He believes that the humiliation of working with those who know what happened will be good for you. Therefore, you are suspended for 2 weeks without pay and demoted to the Central Secretariat. He stood up and walked to the door. Goodbye, Mrs. Fredrickson. He held the door open while I walked out with my head down. Don't make me regret your kindness, he hissed. I flinched from the loud slam of the door behind me. Released, with the feeling that there was nowhere else to go, I climbed into my car and drove home. As soon as I pulled out of our parking space, I heard a signal from my Bluetooth headphones. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Hi, Mom, I answered the call. How are things at the office, dear? At least there was no longer any disappointment in her voice, although I knew it was still there somewhere. Not really, Mom. Look, I don't want to talk about this. I'm on my way home now. Understand. I just wanted to say that your father and I went to the hotel. I didn't want you to be surprised when you arrived. Mom, please. You and Dad are the only ones who even try to be there for me. I can't do it alone. I tried not to sound like a crying teenager, but I knew I wasn't doing a good job. Darling, we love you and will always love you. Maybe our constant support is too protective of you. Maybe you should focus on what you're going to do next instead of beating yourself up. I was starting to think my mom wrote a book about tough love. I knew that pleading would only upset her, so I swallowed my insult and burst into tears as soon as I hung up. Our house had always seemed big, much larger than what the kids and I had before Jerry, but now it seemed absolutely gigantic. I was alone in it many times and never felt uncomfortable. It was a place where we laughed, fought, and loved each other like family. Unfortunately, I don't feel it now. I poured myself a glass of wine and smiled at the bottle. On a family trip to Chile, I found a wine that I absolutely loved. On my next birthday, Jerry surprised me with 2 cases of this wine. The smile quickly disappeared, reminding me of another touching gift from the person I had so stupidly offended. Glass in hand, I went upstairs to take a long, hot bath and maybe figure out how to fix this horror that my life had become. But other than an upcoming visit to my old therapist, the bath has done nothing to help me come up with ideas. Everything seemed pointless until I at least saw Jerry and tried to explain myself. Should I explain? Explain what? Crap, I cursed at my thoughts. With my hair in a bun, I put on my silk Japanese kimono that Jerry had ordered for me from a real boutique in Japan. He brought it back from one of his business trips several years ago. It always made me feel like an Asian princess, but now I felt like a concubine. Although it was unfair to the concubines, at least they knew who they were. I rummaged through the refrigerator in search of something edible. I wasn't hungry, but drinking wine on an empty stomach was a bad idea. I was considering my options when I heard the front door open. Closing the refrigerator, I hoped that my parents had changed their minds, but when I walked out of the kitchen, I saw Jerry standing in the spacious foyer in his coat and gloves. From the day he came into my life, he always looked at me in a way that made me feel special. Now the cramp in my stomach only confirmed what I had already seen or not seen. My first instinct was to rush to him and beg for forgiveness, but my feet seemed rooted to the floor. It seemed that any movement could scare him away. Jerry, great start, Marie. I could barely hear my own voice. I thought you would be in the office. He slowly took off his gloves. I just came to get the phone. He said this, but did not move. Like a child yearning for parental approval, I jumped into action. Of course, I'll bring it now. I may have walked up the stairs slowly, but my heart was pounding as if I were running a marathon. Once in our bedroom, I made the fastest change of my life. The kimono was replaced by leggings and one of his t-shirts. I pulled my hair into a quick ponytail and rinsed my face with water. Taking his phone, I slowed down, going back downstairs. His expression would have been comical if the circumstances had been different. The closer I got to him, the more my legs shook. Stopping a few steps away, I handed him the phone. Our eyes met for a moment before he took it and put it in his coat pocket. We were silent for some time, after which he began to turn around to leave. "This is all," I finally said. My words seemed to freeze him in place. "Jerry, please, please come in and sit down. I know you hate me, but I really, really need to talk to you." I heard his breathing get heavier as he considered my words. "Please don't make me beg, Jerry." There was a few more seconds of silence before he took off his shoes and walked past me into the living room. He unbuttoned his coat and threw it on the armrest of his chair. Normally, I would have made a remark right away. He knew how irritating such little things irritate me, but now it seemed like something comforting to me. "Should I bring you anything? Coffee, tea?" "Whiskey with ice," he answered indifferently. I knew this drink well. He only drank hard alcohol when he was upset or stressed. Now, probably both cases, thanks to me. I prepared his drink, refreshed my wine, and tried not to spill anything, although my shaking hands weren't helping. He accepted the glass gratefully and immediately took a long sip. "You just missed my parents," I said, not knowing where to start. "I know. I talked to them before I came." He took another sip. "Oh, why?" "I wanted to apologize for the blow I dealt them on Christmas Eve." And he said that I would come by to get some things, inviting them to leave if they did not want to see me. I nodded, pretending that I understood everything, although I understood nothing. "I know you talked to Vince. And Kim, have you heard from her?" He looked at the floor, but nodded. She found me. We talked a little before she left." You met Kimmy." I was surprised, perhaps even a little hurt, that she found him on purpose. I don't know why this struck me so much. This girl loved Jerry as much, if not more, than I did. "Where did she find you?" I would prefer not to say. His answer crushed me. He didn't even trust me with information about where he was. It took me by surprise, but it turned out to be useful. He finished his whiskey, and the ice clinked in the empty glass. "Did she talk to you before she left?" I nodded, and he seemed pleased with that. Taking a deep breath, I decided to dive into the deep end. "What are we going to do, Jerry?" His calmness evaporated instantly. He shook his head. I think you've already done enough. But I don't know what to do with this yet. He got up from his seat. Except to break your boss's legs and throw you out the door for your infidelity. He headed towards the bar. I watched through my tears as he poured himself more whiskey. You can tell me why. This is the main question, a question to which I had no answer. I tried to pull myself together and formulate at least some reasonable answer, although I knew that it did not exist. Oh yeah, and if I hear anything like, it didn't mean anything, or it was just sex, I'll leave. Neither was on my tongue, but I knew that at some point I could say it, so I made a mental note that I shouldn't do that. Jerry, I'm telling you honestly, I swear to God. I don't know, I heard him snort contemptuously. Are you imitating Peter? Originally, Marie. I thought I meant at least enough to you for you to be honest. He was right, but it was honest, and that's what scared me the most. How did I become the type of person I despise? Even when I knew that Peter was a dog, it never occurred to me to seek comfort outside. It was wrong, pure and simple. I know how terrible that sounds, Jerry. Even when this happened, I had doubts and suggested stopping. I knew it was wrong and that we were hurting you and Anita. Yes, I saw the pain on your face while your boss was having sex with you. I shuddered at his words. Marie, he did things to you that were strictly forbidden, taboo for you. At least that's what you told me. And I, like an idiot, thought that I was showing respect by respecting your boundaries, and at that time you offered it like the last woman on the street. His pain was visible. It was so unlike Jerry to talk to any woman like that, especially his wife. Even his unfaithful wife. I thought I understood how much I had hurt him, but only now have I begun to realize the true extent of my stupidity. While I was trying to control my sobs, I saw him pour himself another shot of whiskey. Jerry had never been much of a drinker, and this only added to my fear. After he poured the drink, he turned to me. If you can't answer why, then at least tell me when it started. He looked at me over his glass. I ran my hands through my hair. It started after the Kempler case. The Kempler case was a true David versus Goliath, and despite all the obstacles and political games, our firm won the case. There was a big celebration in the office that evening. My role in the case was subtle, Steve's a little more significant, but we were part of the general joy and celebrated as if we were the key stars. Emotions were running high, everyone drank too much. I paused. I went into Steve's office, and he had just come out of the bathroom with his trousers unbuttoned. I joked somehow vulgarly, and the next moment. Yes, tears again. I heard Jerry mutter something, but I couldn't make out a word until he said, well, the excuse, I was too drunk. What about the rest of the time, Marie? Were you drugged or were you drunk every time? How often have you been his personal fuck toy? I didn't have anything at home, so I guess you lived on it at work. It wasn't like that. I screamed, trying to defend myself, although there was no defense. It only happened 5 or 6 times in 4 months. I stupidly decided to cool our relationship because I felt guilty. I didn't want to jeopardize our relationship in case. I thought I was protecting you. Did you protect me? From what? From dirty residues? He looked at me with contempt. Yes, it was obvious that your boss surpassed me in this regard. Those were probably big shoes to fill after Peter. Jerry, please. You have to believe me, it had nothing to do with size or anything like that. You are for me. Then why do you need this? He screamed so loudly that I trembled with fear. I didn't need. My voice refused to work. To hell with it. He put the glass down on the bar counter with a crash, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. Without thinking, I jumped up and ran after him, overtaking him in the foyer. I stopped and turned around, blocking his path. Stop. Please, Jerry, stop. He could have easily walked around me or passed right through me, but fortunately he stopped right in front of me. Please let me say what I have to say. I won't stop you if you leave after this, but please give me a minute of your time. I saw that I had pushed him to the limit. Jerry, this kindest man, rarely got angry. In our entire life together, I only saw him lose control once, and it was terrible. Once at a movie theater, a man hit his wife at the snack counter. He called her all sorts of nasty names, and I could tell from her defensive reaction that this wasn't the first time. While everyone around him watched indifferently, Jerry walked over, grabbed the man by the arm, and politely asked him to calm down. The response to this was a blow aimed at my husband. This was a mistake. As if on automatic, Jerry grabbed him, lifted him, and put him on the floor with a powerful move, which, as I later learned, is called a suplex. Yes, I learned this word for the first time that day. And now I saw the same look in his eyes, and it terrified me. I knew deep down that he would never harm me, but I was horrified by the knowledge that it was my actions that had brought him to this state. Jerry, darling, I love you, he snorted. I know it's hard for you to believe, but it's true. I don't know why I did what I did. I hated myself for it, and even before I knew you knew everything, I decided to end everything on Christmas Eve. He had not left yet, and I took a deep breath, continuing. Please don't do anything hasty, okay? I don't have the right words or answers you need, but I promise I will find them. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll start seeing a therapist again. I want to find answers too, dear. I hate who I have become. A terrible wife, a failed mother, a disappointment for parents. I'm so ashamed of myself that part of me just wants to die. I reached for his hand, and fortunately, he did not pull it away. Seeing how you suffer because of me, knowing that I am the reason for this. The words got stuck in my throat due to new tears. Luckily for him, and for my relief, Jerry did not remove his hand. Without thinking, I hugged him, pressing myself tightly against his broad chest, and soaked his shirt with tears of guilt. He gently released himself from my desperate embrace and walked past me. He stopped at the door to put on his coat. I watched him, feeling that this might be the last time I would see him. The house remains yours for now. I will live in one of the apartments, he said in a cold voice. He opened the door, but before leaving, he turned to me. I have no doubt that you are sorry, Marie. I'm just not sure why exactly. For betrayal, or for the fact that I found out about it. He turned up the collar of his coat. I need time, Marie. Respect that. I'll contact you. His last words were painful, but even more painful was seeing the tears running down his cheeks as he left. I ran to the closed door and collapsed on the floor, sobbing. What have I done? For the first few months, I lived on autopilot. Luckily, I didn't have to make any big decisions and had a great team helping me with day-to-day activities. At my mother-in-law's urging, I started seeing my therapist. It helped me cope with depression and anger, at least with what I felt towards myself. Steve never crossed paths with me once, and I'm grateful for that. Anita told me about the chaos that began in his life after the divorce. He still lived in town and worked for an insurance company, but fortunately I didn't know where. Anita was surprised that I had not yet filed for divorce from Marie. When she asked why, I couldn't answer. However, I felt that she was not trying to put pressure on me. She always said, "No two marriages are the same." Her relationship with her husband was built on years of mistrust, while mine did not have a single day of doubt until Marie gave me a reason. Anita kept me updated on how Marie was doing at the firm. At first, she encountered lukewarm but palpable hostility from her colleagues, but over time she managed to regain her self-respect. Part of me didn't want to know about it, but most of me was happy and proud that she was able to pull herself together. It was July, and I still didn't know what to do with our marriage. Sometimes it seemed like the easiest thing to do would be to leave and heal my wounds. But other days things became more difficult, especially when I honestly admitted that I missed Mimi. My therapist noted that the very fact that I still call her Mimi indicates the beginning of forgiveness. It didn't mean I was ready to get back to her, but my anger was easing. To her credit, Marie respected my request and never tried to surprise me or bother me. I'm sure she got a lot of information from Vince and Kim. I talked to Vince at least a couple of times a week, and even had dinner with him and Peta at a restaurant sometimes. Kim's life was less predictable, and sometimes I would get a random call from her at 3 in the morning. Both children spoke positively about their mother, and it appeared that the bridges between them and Marie were beginning to be repaired. Marie's mother continued to keep in touch through emails. Every 2 weeks, I received a letter from her asking how I was doing. She rarely mentioned my marriage or Marie. Apparently, their relationship had improved too, but she was always concerned with making sure I was taking care of myself. Without my parents to speak out, I could always count on her support. I knew that this situation was painful for them too, and I was glad that we could stay in contact. Although no one spoke directly about our marriage, I was always kept informed of how Marie was doing. No one was trying to make me feel guilty or push me into making a decision. These were genuine comments that fit naturally into conversations. I felt love from this adopted family, and sometimes this made my decisions even more difficult. Or maybe, on the contrary, easier. My therapist had been insisting for a long time that I get closure with Marie, whatever that meant. Enough time has passed, and it is time to make difficult decisions. No one was moving on, and I was the anchor that kept us all in a state of uncertainty. I looked at my calendar and chose a few days that I could dedicate if things didn't work out. With that decision made, I opened the profile of a contact I hadn't spoken to in 7 months. "Hello, Jerry? Is this really you?" I immediately felt disappointed in myself, noticing how much I missed her voice. "Yes, Marie, it's me. It's good to hear your voice, Jerry. How are you?" "I'm holding on, thank you. Listen, Marie, I'll get straight to the point. I think we should meet and talk." My mouth was dry and I almost coughed. "Just the two of us." "Certainly. I'd like to, Jerry. Do you want to come to my place? I can cook dinner and—" "No," I answered more harshly than I wanted. Softening my tone, I repeated, "No, I think it's better for us to meet in a more neutral place." "It's clear." She sounded disappointed. "Where and when do you propose?" I realized that I had not thought through this question in advance. "How about next Saturday? Say, at noon in Langworthy Park." As soon as I said that, I mentally slapped myself in the face. "At the monument?" I could almost hear the smile in her voice. This was the first place that came to my mind. It also happened to be the place where I proposed to her. Great move, idiot. Yes. I should have warned her not to have any illusions. Don't attach any importance to it, Marie. It's just a meeting place. I felt her wilt through the phone. There was nothing more to say, and we ended the conversation. I spent the rest of the day berating myself for such a stupid mistake. The days between scheduling appointments flew by quickly, and that was both good and bad. Early in the morning, my phone rang. I rolled over and saw that the time was 3:35 a.m., and the display showed Kimber, my nickname for her. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the sleepy days. "Good morning, Kim. You can't let a person sleep, right?" I teased. "This is true." Her voice was serious. "What exactly, honey? Are you meeting your mom today?" I didn't expect this. So far, everyone has left me to figure it out on my own. I didn't want anyone to interfere and make the situation even more confusing. "Yes, Kimmy, but I'd rather not discuss it. This is between me and your mom." I heard her son through the phone. "Who is?" Her voice became less confident, almost trembling. "I know," she muttered. "You know I'm always on your side, Jerry. What Mom did to you was the biggest betrayal, especially considering her past with Peter. She never called Peter her father. Even after all this time, I still can't forgive her for cheating, but—" She cleared her throat. "I know my mother, and from the very first day of our arguments, I saw that she realized her mistake and was ready to move mountains if only she could take it all back. She works a lot with a therapist and psychologist. I don't ask for details, but she's desperate to find answers, both for you and for herself." "Kimmy, honey, this is unhealthy. I know. I'm not calling you to tell you to go back to her. I would never do this. No matter what you decide in the end, you will always be a father to me. I know we never formalized the adoption, but I swear to God, you will forever be my dad." The depth of her words touched me deeply, and my emotions came flooding back. My throat tightened. "I love you too, Kim. I always will." She cried a little louder. Just listen to her, okay? Don't minimize your pain and what she did, but really listen to her. Can you promise me that? Please? Of course, Kim. This is a conversation, and I know I need to hear what she has to say. I'm not going to insult her. It's your mind talking. I need you to listen with your heart. She sobbed. I love you, Jerry. Good night. She hung up without letting me answer. I lay there, thinking about the nature of her call. It was so Kim. I swear she should have become a psychiatrist. She knew how to talk to people. That's why her opinion of her mother was so important to me. This added another dimension to my thoughts, and I realized that I would not be able to sleep again, so I got up and began to get ready. I arrived early, hoping to grab a bench before Marie arrived, but as I walked around the last bushes on the path, I saw that she had beaten me to it. It was cool for early August, and she wore leggings and a light sweater. This image has always suited her. As soon as she saw me, she stood up, looking unsure of what she should do. I raised my hand, gesturing for her to stay put, and walked on. Good morning, Jerry. She looked at her watch. Phew, technically I'm right. Good morning, Marie, I answered quietly. You look good. Have you lost weight? I realized she was trying to be friendly, but I couldn't help but chuckle at her observation. Yes, probably. True, not on purpose. She realized that I was hinting at stress, and her expression became cautious. No doubt I had struck a nerve. You look amazing as always, Marie. It was a compliment to improve her mood, but also the honest truth. She really looked amazing. Maybe we should sit down. I pointed to the bench, and we both sat down. After an awkward pause and a few formal pleasantries, Marie took the initiative. I know you called me to talk, Jerry, but can I speak first? She smiled her sweet smile. The one I usually used when I knew I had messed up. Not knowing where to start, I gave her consent. I worked on this for a long time, hoping that one day I would be able to share it with you. I understand that I can't fix everything, and no matter what I say, my apologies cannot heal the pain. She looked at her hands and took a deep breath. Thank you for not filing for divorce, at least not yet. I wouldn't blame you if you did. Maybe that's why you wanted to meet. But anyway, I need to say this. She turned to me. I spent a lot of time with a therapist and psychologist trying to find some rational explanation for my actions, because it is not associated with unhappiness or dissatisfaction. I know you doubted yourself, Jerry, but it honestly has nothing to do with you or anything you've done. The last 10 years have been the happiest of my life. I think my face betrayed my thoughts because she stopped and put her hand on my arm. I understand. Nonsense, right? I think the same thing. I know how it sounds, Jerry, but I swear on my daughter's life it's true. She removed her hand as if she was afraid that I would push her away. I heard a lot of psychological jargon. I even tried hypnotherapy with my psychologist, and that's what I've learned so far. Even though you and I have had a wonderful life, I still suffer from low self-esteem. I never suspected this, but it came to light during hypnotherapy. On some level, I didn't believe I deserved you. I didn't deserve to be as happy as I was. And then an evening of excessive drinking and poor judgment occurred, and I unknowingly descended into self-destruction. When I realized what had happened, I became confused and began to hate myself. This was the beginning of how I began to move away from you. Steve seemed genuinely caring and convinced me that this was what I needed to feel valued. I rolled my eyes and she smiled. Yes, I was so stupid. So this is your excuse, some kind of temporary insanity? My voice was rougher than she was used to. No, I would never use that as an excuse. I was aware of what I was doing. I was also aware that I hated myself for it. I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I stopped it. All this in no way falls under temporary insanity. She took a deep breath. There's no one reason for this, Jerry. Even if what I did had an acronym or a psychological definition, it would still sound like an excuse. The truth is that no matter what I say, you can always find holes in my explanations and invalidate them. She stood up and looked down at me. I love you, Jerry. I hate myself for allowing myself to do this, and I don't know if I can ever forgive myself. So how can you forgive me? She leaned over, kissed my cheek, and brought her face closer to mine. All I ever wanted was to be loved by a good man, and I ruined that. I hope one day you can forgive me, Jerry. I will accept whatever you decide to do next. This is the minimum I owe you. With these words, she turned around and slowly walked away. I watched her walk away, my thoughts confused. Things didn't go at all as I expected. Damn, I didn't even have time to say anything. I was a little angry that I wasn't given a chance to speak, but it was clear that she thought about it as much as I did. I sat there for some time, lost in my thoughts, when I noticed someone standing next to me. Raising my head, I suddenly felt a flash of rage and abruptly rose to my feet. Steve, what the hell? My sentence was cut off by the sound of him pulling a small pistol from his pocket. Shut up, you damn loser. You don't deserve it. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face expressed anger. Do you deserve it? I asked as calmly as possible. I knew I could easily take on this guy in a fight, but I didn't stand a chance against a bullet. She was truly happy with me. Full-fledged. We planned to be together. It seems to me that he himself believed what he said, although I heard recordings that told a completely different story. Yes, Steve, that's not what was said on the tapes. I watched as his grip on the gun became stronger. Oh, she felt guilty, but only after sex, when she had to go home to her rich savior. Did you like these posts? I heard people like you enjoy it. Did you enjoy listening to your wife being satisfied by a real man? I would have laughed if I hadn't known that he would probably shoot. This man was clearly not himself. Marie did a terrible thing, but her actions after I found out were far from acting. No, Steve lived in some kind of fantasy world. So what's your plan, Steve? Kill me in broad daylight. Do you think this will bring Marie back to you? If you're so good in bed, why would you put me out of the way? I started to provoke him. Not the best plan, but my anger overshadowed my common sense. Shut up. He raised the gun to the level of my chest. You're just an obstacle, you freak. And like all obstacles, you need to be eliminated. I watched and cursed the worthless fate that brought me to such an end. My thoughts flashed to Kim, Vince, and yes, Marie. No, oh. We both turned towards the scream. Before we could realize what was happening, Marie threw herself in front of me, shielding me with her body. If not for the circumstances, it would have looked funny it barely covered a third of my body. Marie. We screamed at the same time. Steve, don't do this. This is the height of stupidity. I tried to pull her behind me, but she grabbed onto me and pressed herself even closer to me. Get out of the way, Marie. Don't you understand? We can finally be together without any guilt. Steve waved his gun. Marie, go away, I whispered in her ear, but she ignored me. Steve, listen to me. There is nothing between us. What we did was a huge mistake. It hurt a lot of people. It wasn't love, Steve. You see this, right? While they were exchanging remarks, I noticed how a couple of passers-by appeared from behind the bushes and froze when they saw what was happening. I made eye contact with the man and motioned for them to go back. The situation was bad enough as it was, and I was afraid that someone else might get hurt. Marie and Steve continued their dialogue, but it sounded more and more unbalanced. He destroyed everything. He couldn't just accept his role as a good turple. No, he had to destroy everything. I reacted to this insult, and Steve again raised the gun threateningly, and Marie pressed herself even closer to me. Steve, listen. It's not Jerry's fault that you lost your job or got divorced. He only found out about it because Anita showed him her evidence. I'm telling you what you already know, Steve. Why? Why are you doing this? Do you want to go to jail? At least they provide food there. I lost my last job, and I don't even have money for food. I watched the man in front of me have a nervous breakdown. At that moment, I thought more about the safety of Marie and her children than about what was going on in his head. Marie tried to calm him down, speaking quietly but confidently. Steve, put the gun down, she asked. We can just go our separate ways and leave this as an unpleasant moment. No one will get hurt and everything will end. Her words worked for a moment. The weapon slowly lowered, but then everything changed. His gaze filled with rage, his hand with the gun trembled, and he pointed it straight at her. "If you don't be with me, you won't be with anyone," he shouted. A moment, and I acted instinctively. I shielded her with myself, expecting the worst. My heart was pounding, and the world seemed to slow down. But instead of a shot, I heard her loud gasp, which brought me back to reality. I turned around and saw Steve on the ground. A man in a police uniform was already nearby. "Everything is fine?" he asked us. But I couldn't answer. Everything happened so quickly that I still couldn't believe it was the end. Marie began to sob, and without thinking, I hugged her, forgetting for a moment about all my anger. The sight of Steve lying on the ground did not bring me any joy. Of course, I would have liked to hit him a couple of times, but seeing him in such a state was completely different. The policeman checked Steve's pulse and made a radio call. He then looked at us and confirmed that we were fine. Apparently, the couple I saw earlier had run into him, and he ran to the scene, stopping Steve before he could shoot at us. "Could you sit down? Paramedics and several more officers will arrive soon. You will be asked to give evidence." We nodded and sat down on the bench. Marie was still holding on to me tightly. We watched in silence as the paramedics and police arrived. People began to gather nearby, curiously viewing the tragic scene. I realized that this would be a topic of discussion in local circles in the coming days. Slowly, I began to come out of my daze and focused on the woman in my arms. "Why did you come back, Marie?" I asked as she lifted her head to look at me. "I left, lost in my thoughts. I wanted to tell you how sorry I am and how much I love you. And when I left, I remembered that I didn't even give you a chance to say what you wanted. When I came back, I saw Steve pointing a gun at you. Oh God, I thought he was going to kill you, because of me." She buried her head in my chest and burst into tears. "I'm glad you came, Mom." My daughter hugged me in the middle of her tiny living room. "Me too, darling. Me too." Despite what happened that day in the park, Jerry could never forgive me for my stupid betrayal. Oh, he tried. Right after the incident with Steve, things looked promising. He didn't come home, and there was no intimacy between us, but we started going to therapy together once a week. However, then everything stalled. We became close, but Jerry was never able to overcome the final hurdle. I still remember the date, November 2nd. He came to my house and said he needed to discuss something. In my heart of hearts, I hoped that he would announce that he was returning home, but I did not want to deceive myself in advance. And of course, everything did not go according to plan. Jerry said that he really wants to leave bygones in the past, but the blow he received was so unexpected that he can no longer trust anyone. And without trust, according to him, there can be no relationship. He said he was going to Istanbul for 4 months as his business expanded, and upon his return, he will have divorce documents prepared, and we will discuss everything with our lawyers. He assured me that I would be in a good financial position, despite the terms of the prenuptial agreement. We hugged warmly before he left, but as soon as the door closed behind him, I burst into tears. Until this moment, I always hoped that we could make things right. When Vince went to Germany, this time for real, I was left alone for Christmas. Kim finally persuaded me to come and spend a week with her. She still worked normal hours, but we were able to spend mornings and afternoons together. She was just about to leave for her shift. "Have you heard anything from—" I couldn't finish my question. Kimmy just smiled sadly and shook her head. "No, Mom, I haven't heard anything for several weeks. He sounded fine, but I don't think he's fully moved on yet either." Her eyes were full of sympathy. I knew she loved Jerry, and he would always be a part of her life. And I turned out to be superfluous. "Well, I hope he finds happiness again," he managed to squeeze out. I really meant it, but it still hurt. Sensing my mood starting to darken, Kimmy grabbed my hands. "I have all the ingredients for our special pancakes. When I get home, we'll eat them all day and get fat." She made me laugh. With a quick kiss on the cheek, she walked out the door, heading out to save lives. I tinkered around the apartment a little, cleaning and doing all sorts of little things. Finally, having come to terms with the feeling of loneliness, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled in front of the TV. There were only Christmas movies on, so I chose the least romantic one, The Grinch, with Jim Carrey. It's not my favorite movie. I always thought Carrey was overreacting by making The Grinch too hysterical, but it was the kind of light comedy that could take my mind off things. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.